Good morning, or afternoon, or evening, whenever you're watching this. Well, this month, January, I am turning 77 years old. Uh, I find it interesting. I am beginning to feel my age. I've looked my age for a long time. But at any rate, I get to thinking about my life, and I'm very fortunate in that I had an interesting life. It's not like I worked a particular job for 20 or 30 years. Um, so my life has sort of been in chapters. Um, and I've done a lot. But let me get to a memory, recent memory. When I was in electronics school in the Air Force, Keesler Air Force Base, Biloxi, Mississippi. Um, One of the instructors who was nearing his retirement uh, would digress into what he was going to do when he retired. He says, I'm going to get me a house right on the beach. He says, I'm going to hang me a hammock, and I'm going to lay in that hammock and have my wife bring me cool drinks, and I'm going to philosophize. Uh, well, I guess this is this stage of my life when I actually philosophize. But I look back on it and the things that I've done, experiences I've had. I've raced cars, raced motorcycles, flown airplanes. Um, I've moved my residence, I think 28 or 29 times. That doesn't include the military. uh, so I've been very well off, and I've been without. So um, I've worked in a foreign country. I was taken prisoner by hostile forces in the Middle East. I've seen a man literally cut up with knives some 50 yards away from me, thinking I was going to be next. Of course, those are the kinds of things I never would want to repeat nor wish it on anybody. But all those experiences add up, and that's been my life. So I got a lot to think about. Rarely was I ever bored, but I think part of my personality is to um, be first in line. Which brings me to another memory. When I was in the first grade, this would have been back in 53, something like that, 54. Um, and the polio vaccine had just come out, but it was injected. It wasn't the sugar cube or any of that. So nationwide, there was a big drive to get everybody vaccinated to prevent that horrible disease. So, as usual, I wanted to be first in line. the thing is, the people giving the shots, the ladies giving the shots, were the mothers of the students, and they had been given a few minutes training with injecting water into an orange. So here I am. I'm the first human, I guess, that this lady was given a shot to. So she was very nervous. So she stuck in that needle and dropped it. In other words, she lost control of the needle, and it just went, whoop, and which meant the needle was already in, so the skin bowed up, and she screamed. And I was over there looking at that, and I think, oh, I'm going to die. So I started screaming, which set up a long-term fear of needles on my part. And that, in fact, that wasn't. So when I was 11 years old, I backed a nurse into a corner with a chair. She was trying to give me a shot. And that fear of needles wasn't really broken until I went in the Air Force and got shot after shot after shot. And when I was deployed overseas, I lost track of the number of shots. Those who have been in the military know what I'm talking about. You get in a long line and they. So that cured me of the needle phobia, which is good because I'm a type 2 diabetic and I have to give myself two insulin shots every day. So I've given myself, I was trying to calculate how many shots I've given myself since I started giving myself insulin shots in 2005. So anyway, it works out to over 12,000 shots. Life is interesting. So anyway, in my playlist growing up in the 1950s, there's a lot of things that you youngsters can't even conceive of in terms of the experience of the olden days, Stone Age. But hopefully, some of my recounting of experiences back then and since you may find interesting or entertaining or both. Back in the 50s, I can remember when we got our first TV, and it was around the tube, about this big, black and white, of course. And the TV cameras were huge, and they were all used vacuum tubes, so they had to warm up for a very long time. So and back then the TV stations didn't broadcast all day because there was no way to tape shows, so everything had to be live. I can remember when they did finally come out with, I think they call it Cinescope or something, anyway, where they could convert movie film to broadcast, but it was broadcast live. I mean, and the quality was, of course, all the TV quality back then was poor. The first program I can remember watching, and I don't know why it stood out so much. I think because my dad was so intent on watching it and having the family watch it, because he said this is a historical moment. He was a World War II veteran, went in the summer of 41 and got out in 47. But at any rate, the thing he wanted us to watch was President Eisenhower's farewell address, which had the infamous line of beware of the military industrial complex. And that was illustrated all too well by the Vietnam War. But anyway, I'm going to try to keep this on sort of a pleasant note. But back in that day, we had to make our own fun when we were growing up. In my family, my dad was, he had worked for Eastman Kodak for 11 years. And about 50, I think it's 1957, he left them and started his own company. So he was doing that, and at the same time, he was almost single-handedly, with the help of my mom too, of course, building a house. My dad was really a workaholic. And anyway, and the thing is that I enjoyed so much about that period is he encouraged me to help him. I really wasn't much help. I was more in his way probably, but at any rate, he was working with my dad was about the only way I was going to get to have any exposure to him at all, because he's always working. If he's awake, he's working. But it served me well, and he was a very patient man, so therefore an excellent teacher. As you can tell, I'm just rambling. There's no script here. Sort of one memory triggers another. After the Air Force, I came home. I got an early out because of the being held prisoner. I had the option of either staying in or getting out, so I got out. I served only a total of 17 months, and most of that was school. Got a great electronics training. In fact, the Air Force was converting from analog to digital, so I got intense low-level exposure to digital electronics and software. We had to program EEPROM chips with a hexadecimal pad. It's about as low level as you can get. But that served me well because, as it turned out, the bulk of my working career was in as a computer programmer. I got in it when you could still make a good living at that. Anyway, but when I got out and I met my wife, we were married, and but when we first met, I was racing motorcycles at the time, mostly enduro and motocross. So I'd done my flying before I went in the Air Force, so that was already behind me, and my car racing was behind me. So at any rate, a year or two after I got back and was married, my wife and I went down to Mexico and worked down there for a couple of years. She was a registered nurse, and that was a terrific experience. We worked amongst the an Indian tribe in central Mexico. Our time down there was nothing like what a tourist sees then or even today in Mexico. Some of it was, in retrospect, was a bit dangerous. Wouldn't do it again. See, here's one thing that's really important for you youngsters to know. When you're young, you can't conceive of actually getting killed doing something. So you tend to be, I don't want to say reckless, but maybe reckless to a degree. But you're sort of wanting to test life to its limits. Got to be careful with that. But at any rate, I don't want to carry this thing off out too long in one session here. I'm going to file this in my living in the 1950s playlist, even though it pertains to some modern stuff. I'm going to flash forward real quick to today. We've just come through. This is January the 3rd, so we've just come through New Year's, and that's the time when you make your resolutions and think about the future and whatnot. Despite all I've seen in my lifetime, I think right now we're living into which is to me maybe the scariest point in my life, from the standpoint of what's happening in the world and to our nation. I'm afraid we may see some radical changes in 2024. Makes me nervous. I don't know what the outcome of those things are going to be, and I'm not going to get into it because it involves religion and politics, two things I vowed not to get into on my YouTube channel. But if you're not watching the news carefully and all the events that's going on, maybe ignorance is bliss. Maybe what makes it so scary for me is the fact that at my stage in life, there's almost nothing I can do to have even the least impact on what's going on. I mean, I could go cast a vote at the polls, but beyond that, I don't have the wherewithal to have any kind of financial grip on things. And unfortunately, we live in a time when, 1% of the citizens of this country control 80% of the wealth. So that's where the power is. Anyway, I'm really getting off my topic here, so I'm going to end it at this point. If you enjoy any of this, please subscribe and hit notify so when I bring out another one of these earth-shaking, monumental videos, you'll not miss it. So I'm halfway to my 1,000 subscriber number. I'd like to get there. We'll see. All right, as promised.